The Revit, yes, the Revit screen. Can you see it?
Oh, how are you today?
Oh yes, clear, that's good. Okay. We're going to do a slightly more complex building today than the one that we did last time. I'm going to use a steel structure, and I'm just going to start it now. I'm assuming they're all working okay. So I don't need you to follow along in the same way. I'll get this video made available to you, and I'm going to reduce the toing and froing with the answering of questions. I'm simply going to do the model almost like a standard video tutorial. I'll keep the talking head in the frame so you can see me as I speak. And I'll let you send the SMS so they can join. Okay, so this is going to be a wee bit more of a complex building, a complex structure, and I'm going to use the structural template. I'm using a blank from the structural template, and I'm going to start now. If they have not got this, then they can catch up. I'll send them the video file. So, a blank structural template. It opens up in pretty much the same way. The interface is identical. There's no real change in the interface. Still the ribbon, still the two panels on the left. The properties contextually sensitive, so whatever we select in here will change in here according to what properties we have. And down here the project browser as usual, so it should all be looking a wee bit more familiar this time. I'm going to move a wee bit quicker so we get more done, but with the video at your own disposal. I'll have it on the web server certainly by this time tomorrow, and I'll send you the URL. You can pause it and start it as you like, and that way I think we'll be a wee bit more efficient. So I'll move this along just a bit quicker. The setup doesn't change that much. I'm going to make this quite a large building. I'm going to zoom out a bit, and I'm in level 1. Gridline is the first one, I'm sure you'll remember. I'm just going to put in some grid lines. I'm going to put in maybe half a dozen of these. These are all going to be at 10 metres apart. I've zoomed out a wee bit because it's less sensitive to the dimensioning, and it would just easier to deal with. So I'm going to put in a few of these. I'm putting in a few of these. I'll go up to maybe 10 of them. 10 of them vertically. Now these are numbered numerically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'll do another few, all at 10 metres apart. They don't have to be 10 metres apart, I'm just choosing that they have to be something, so 10 metres is going to be fine for me. One more. I think we've got a good few in. We've got sufficient in to make this a substantial building. Right. So that's me got 10 vertical grid lines in. I'm going to put in half a dozen horizontal grid lines. The very first thing I have to do is remember I'm creating intersections here because I'm going to use these intersections to place things on. And I have to make sure that I make the intersection. I don't start in the corner here. That's kind of the intuitive thing to do, but please avoid doing that. The first one, horizontally, also retains the numerical numbering, and I want to change that. These are going to be alphabetically numbered. Alphabetically numbered? Well, I'm sure there's a proper way of saying that, but that's what they're going to be. The second one, that will follow that system. They'll all be identified by letters of the alphabet. If I look at this one now, it should say B, and then the rest of them will go on in a similar manner. Well, we see this will be obviously it's going to be D. I'll do one more. So that's the grid finished. Now before I use this grid, I'm going to finish off the setup by putting in the level lines. I go to an elevation view, and I've got a couple of level lines given to me here. I'm going to put some underneath and above. And the level line tool is not available because I'm looking at this building in elevation, a side view. I'm going to put this one down a meter down. I'm going to put this next one down 3 meters from that. So that's going to be 2 down there. Now this one here, I'm going to call it the deep level foundation, and I'm going to call it footings and pile caps, which is what's going to be on it. Footing and pile caps. I just click in the white space. I get this usual dialogue opening up saying would I like to rename the corresponding views, and that's going to be a yes, and this will rename it over here. That will become footings and pile caps. I'm sure you can see it. This one here, I'm going to rename it as well. I'm going to call it Raft Foundation. So that's the shallow foundations. These are just a meter subsurface. These are 4 meters. This is going to be ground level. Ground level. And it's fine at 0. This one is going to be the new level 1. And now I'm going to put in another half dozen of these level lines. And I hope you can still hear me alright. I'm just going to put in a few more of these, all at 3 meters. And then when you look at this video and you're doing it, you can pause it, rewind as often as you like. How many I've got now, but I'm feeling as if I'm getting quite high in the building. I'll do another couple, and that'll be that. All at 3 meters. I'll keep them all the same so that when I come to the stage when I'm putting stairs on it, I can make them just copy and paste them onto different levels. So I'm thinking ahead a wee bit. And that's, I've gone up to level 9, that'll do. I'll call this one roof level. Click in the white space as usual. Same old question about level 9 in here, and that'll become a roof level. Okay? So that's the setup finished. I'm going to go now to the ground level where I've got the grid lines. These are elevations. I'm just going to move them out of the way a wee bit. They're not doing any harm, but neither are they helping much, so I'm just going to move them out of the way. This one here, slightly obtrusive, down there somewhere. This one here is obviously north. Oops. Put that somewhere there. I'll fix these later on. So that's the setup complete. First thing I do in a steel structure is I put in the structural columns. So I go to Structure, Column, select the Column tool, and I'll go with this default column I've put in for the moment, but I will change this at a later date because these are enormous columns and this building isn't going to be that high. We're not building a tower here. 9 floors, not including roof. So I'm just going to leave it at this for the moment, but that will change. Alright. On the column tool, the structural column tool, I have to make sure this says vertical, and I have to make sure this says at grids, and it doesn't, so I'm going to make it at grids. And then I simply select all the grid intersections. And I don't know if you can see, but the columns have now been placed. If I zoom in, you'll see I've got the columns in alright at the grid intersections. Now, they're quite hard to see, so I'm going to look at this in 3D for a second. Now, using the structural template, there's no default 3D view, so I'm going to put the default 3D view in, and it's populated the project browser. And this is the 3D view. Now, these columns, I'll zoom into them, I'll show you one or two wee problems with them. We have the analytical model shown. That's what this coloured line down the middle is. We'll come to the analytical model in at a later date, certainly not today. I'm going to, for the moment, I'm going to switch it off. I'm also going to change the visual style of this so it's easier to see. This is a wireframe. I'm going to change the visual style down here to consistent colours. So they're just a bit easier on the eye to look at. I'm going to select them all. So I select one and then I SA to select them all. And I want the structural columns to begin not at the Raft Foundation but at footings and pile caps. And I want them to go up. I'm going to make them go up to level 2 for the moment. So just so I can see them. And then I'm going to go to the footings and pile caps level here. And here we have it. This series of columns, this series here, have to get, it's called flipped. I select them, as you saw that I just did. I'll do it again. Just select them like that, box them. You hit the space bar one time, that'll flip them. And I don't know if you'd noticed what's happened, but they've changed from this vertical orientation. Because I flipped them, they're now facing in a horizontal direction. I don't do it with the corners, although I might come at some later date to change their orientation as well, but for the moment I'm going to leave them in their original vertical orientation. I'll do the same with this series of columns in the middle here, just exactly the same thing. Highlight them, flip them with the space bar, and if I look at that in 3D, we should see that some of them are facing in their original orientation, some of them are now facing in this direction. I'll explain that when we come to it, but I don't want to just muddy the water. I'll just leave it as it is for the moment. But just remember that I have already pre-flipped some of the perimeter columns. I'm going to go back to footings and pile caps, and I'm going to think about now putting in the appropriate footings. Structure, isolated footings, isolated foundations, and the first one I've got is going to be, I'll just run with this. I could load in more, in fact I will have to load in more in a minute, but for the moment I'm going to put the perimeter footings in. So I'm just going to go with this one. I'm even going to choose the smaller of the two, 1800 by 1200, and this will be a pad foundation for each of these columns. I am going to simply select at columns, and then I just select the columns. You'll see that they've gone in. If I check it in 3D, you'll see that they're also properly oriented. Some of them are oriented in their original position, like this one here, but these have orientated according to the column. I'll go back to footings and pile caps, and I'll do it for this lot here. So structure, isolated foundation, at columns, select the columns, and then if I finished it like that, and then I have to do it again, remembering to click at columns again, and finish, and at columns, and the remaining three, and finish. So now I'll escape that, and I've got all the footings round the perimeter of the structure. And I'll check it again in 3D. It's a good thing to keep checking in 3D that it's doing what you think it's doing, and that's fine. I'm happy with that. Zooming out a wee bit. That's okay. So I'll go back to this level again, and then I'm going to load in a more heavy duty kind of foundation for these columns which are in the centre of the building. And I simply go to Insert, Load Family, and it opens up a library for me. And the library has a folder in it called Structural Foundations. I open up the Structural Foundations, and I'm going to load in one that says Pile Cap 2 Round Piles, which is this one here. It gives you a wee preview of it here. Be careful when you're doing this that you don't load up Pile Cap for 2 round piles. That's just the pile cap itself. I want the piles as well, and I'll just load that. So loaded in. So then this time when I go to Isolated Foundation, it's remembered that that was the last activity here. I've got them loaded. Again, at columns, and just simply identify all the columns and finish, and the pile caps are loaded in. I'll check it in 3D. Checking in 3D is a good habit to get into. You'll see I have all of the foundations in and all of the columns properly oriented. So now I'm going to go to the Raft Foundation level. And I'm going to put a floor, a Raft Foundation slab, round this structure. I'm just going to keep it as a rectangle, although I could start to fiddle with it and play with its footprint. I'm simply going to keep it simple. I'm selecting the slab tool. I'm going to make sure I have the offset here. This tends to misbehave and go back to 0, so I want you to keep your eye on this up here when you're doing it. I'm simply going to select rectangle here because I'm going to make it a rectangle, and then I'm going to put an offset of 500, and I select the middle there, top left, and then the middle here, bottom right. I finish it, and that's the raft done. Again, checking it 3D. You'll see that that's what the raft looks like. As usual, the raft needs to have a raft edge or a slab edge. The slab edge tool is there. I'm just going to select the underside, tab and left click, and all of the footprint gets the appropriate slab edge. In this case it's just a simple rectangle, so it looks very straightforward. If you had a complicated footprint, that's a very useful tool. I would normally repeat something like that at this stage, but as you can just pause and rewind and replay, it seems a bit pointless to do that. So I'm going to go back to the Raft Foundation level, and I'm going to put structural walls around the footprint of this rectangular building. Structural wall, and then I'm going to choose an appropriate wall from the type selector, and I'm going to use some kind of foundation wall. I'm sure I'll find something suitable there eventually. I spoke too soon. No partition. I'm just going to go with a generic wall. I think this one I'll have to do. I'll have to change its properties at a later date. I'm going to select that wall. I want to make sure that it's finish face exterior. And then here I can either use this line tool and select it corner from corner all the way round, or I can use this line selector, and that's what I'm going to use this time, because the last time I remember I used this. So I'm going to select the line tool, and I'm just going to select the lines. And then make sure I select the outside of the lines. That's fine. I'm going to check this in 3D again, and you'll see I now have the walls in. They're in the wrong place, these walls. I'm going to change that now. So I select one of them, and then I S8, select all. At the moment it says Raft Foundation, the base constraint, and the top constraint is the same, which is why it's given it this magic base offset. I'm going to change this up to ground level and put that to 0. And that wall should look like that. It should follow that footprint all the way around. Quite straightforward. We footprint this, and that's about it. It's a structural wall, we know that. I'm just going to check that this in fact says structural in here, and this says bearing, and it does, so I'm quite happy. So now I'm kind of coming out the ground now. I'm going to go to ground level. I'm going to put a floor in. All the items put in will be structural. Structural model. I'll go with a generic floor, I think. Yeah, generic floor will do fine. 300mm. Now I'll just highlight one of the walls. Tab to highlight them all. I left click and I finish. I don't want the walls to connect to the underside of the floor, so that's a no. But I do want the floor to cut out the geometry from the wall. So that's that. If I check that in 3D, I've got the floor in. I'd like it to be selected, so if it's not selected when you do this, select it at this stage. I'm going to copy that floor. I don't want to model it on every level. I'm just simply going to copy it up onto the clipboard and paste aligned. Now it's on the ground, so I'm going to put it on 2 of these levels. And we're beginning to get what looks like a building. Now I'm going to foreshorten this floor profile as I copy up the building. I'm going to select just the columns. Now, in case I've selected too much, I don't think I have, but in case I have, I go to filter and make sure that it's just the columns that I've selected. So it is. I'm going to go up. I've got them on level 2 right now. I'm going to take them up to level 4. Oops. Level 4. And then I'm going to copy this again and paste it up 1 level up to level 3. So it should look like that. And this one, I'm going to foreshorten this floor profile. So I'm going to edit its boundary. I go to the level that I'm on, level 4, and I'm going to put in a new boundary line again with an offset of 500. The offset's always going to be the same. Oops, not 5,000, no, 500. And I'm going to come into somewhere, I think about here. And then I'm going to use this tool here, which is a trim and extend to corner tool. It's a great wee handy tool. Select that tool there. Select the lines you want to keep. I'm keeping this and I'm keeping this. This goes. And I'm keeping this one here and I'm keeping this one here. So anything down here goes. And this one simply gets deleted. Oops. Select it and delete. And finish off your new floor. Check it in 3D. Just have a visual check that your offset did in fact work, and I'm just going to check with them that they are there, they're fine. And then this floor, I'm going to take up all the way up through the rest of the building. So I'm going to copy it onto the clipboard and paste aligned. Now it's on level 4 I think from memory, so I'm going to go to 5 and take it up to level 8. Alright, so that's the shape of our building. Now, some of the columns are going to go up to support that floor, some are not. So I'm going to carefully select these columns. Now I've over-selected this. I think you'll probably see I've got a floor selected there. I'm going to deselect that. I can either shift and deselect it from there, or I can filter it out as a selection and simply uncheck it there and leave me with the columns. Now these are the columns I want. I don't want to select this lot of columns, they're going to be fine. I'm going to take these columns up to level, I think it's 8. Apply. And these columns here, I'm going to take them down. Level 2 I think from looking at it. And we're getting there now. I'm going to select this floor, copy it to the clipboard and paste aligned 5, 6, 7 and 8. And I think that should be ours. Clearly not. Put it on level 4 as well. And that's basically the shape of the building. Now it's all very well, but I don't have any beams in the building, so the floors at the moment are simply resting on columns. There's no structural framing here. And I'm going to go to a level 1 here, and I'm going to place the beams. The beam tool, you can select it with the grids. And sorry, just one more thing, I think I'll make it easier for you to look at. This is the default 3D view. I'm going to make a copy of it. and then I'm going to change that copy and rename it. So I right click here, I duplicate it, this is its copy, I rename it here, I'll rename this 3D structural steel, 3D structural steel, and then I'm going to change what this is displaying. So making sure that this is bold and I'm actually on 3D structural steel, I go into visibility and graphics here, and I'm going to simply show structural elements. I don't want architectural elements shown. These are all unchecked, that's fine. In fact, even within structure I've got too much going on here. I don't want to be showing the floors or generic models or lines. I don't want walls shown either. Just leave it at that. Nothing else showing. So the floors will disappear. I'll keep the foundations in, handy to see them, kind of a good visual guide of what's going on. And then I'm going to go to the level 1, I think, and I'll put the grids in. Now, if I WT, that's a new keyboard shortcut for you. WT will show me all the windows I've opened in this project. Now, this one I want to keep. I don't want to be seeing the default 3D view, so I'll just close it. And all these that I use, this is the raft, I'm going to close that as well. I'm going to shut these down. I don't want to be looking at them. So now when I've got the two open that I do want to open, I WT it again, and then I ZF it, and I put the model in the middle of the window. I'll leave this sitting here so you can see the beams appear. I'm actually going to use this window to place them. So I'll use the beam tool, and because this is in plan view, this tool here on grids is active for me. If I were to put this onto the 3D view, this would grey out and it wouldn't be available to me. So I'll just show you how that works. That's the active window. I can't use on grids in the 3D view. Clearly, there are no grids. Here we are, structural plan level 1. The grid tool is available to me, so I'm going to use it. But what I do is I select the grids. Select the grid lines I'm going to use. Holding the control key down to keep selecting, sorry. I should have said, hold the control key down. All of these grids are going to be used. All of them. And finish. And then here you'll see the structural framing appear. Alright. So I'm going to close this one now. And I'm going to just maximise, I'm going to maximise this window. I'm going to select a single beam and then SA, so I select them all. Now I don't know if you'll remember that the thickness of our floors was 300mm, and these are going to be sitting in the same 3D space as our floors, and that's unacceptable. These beams support the floors, they don't occupy the same 3D space as them. So if I were to look at that in the default 3D, you can see they're actually intruding upon them, you can see through them. That's clearly not what should happen. The beams, the structural framing, should be underneath the floors in order to give them the necessary support. So I'll go back here, I'm going to select all of the beams again, select one, SA will select them all. I'm going to give them a start level offset to the value of the thickness of the floor, which in my case was minus 300. It's not always minus 300, sometimes the floor thickness isn't 300, so be careful. Apply, and then these should just pop down. I don't know if you saw that, but they did pop down a wee bit, and the new offset, the negative offset, is visible to you. You can see them in there. If I zoom in, you should see them. I'm assuming you can't see this. I'm not doing the interactive thing over here. I'm just making this a bit like a traditional tutorial video. And I'll make it available to you, as I said, so you can use it in a more kind of conventional way rather than as a webinar. So I've got these all offset minus 300. I'm going to copy them and I'm going to paste these aligned. I've got them on level 1. I want them on the ground level. They're going to support the ground floor as well, and you should see them up here. Okay, it's looking kind of busy, and I'm also going to put them on level 2, so I'm going to go paste. I've already got them on the clipboard, I won't bother copying them again. I'll put them on level 2. And that will be that. Now, I need to have beams on these floors as well, and this is quite simple. I simply use paste aligned again, and I'll put them on, I think it's level 4. And then, well, clearly it wasn't level 3, would have been better, but I'll just paste the next one into level 3. I just deselect them, and then with some care, I select this lot here that I want rid of, delete them. Okay, and then I select here, and clearly I've got too many things selected. I don't want to select the columns, so what do? I filter them out. The structural columns get filtered out, unchecked here. Okay, so I'm left with the framing, the beams, and I'm going to copy this new floor profile onto the clipboard and align, paste aligned, level 3. I've got them on level 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that'll come right up through the building, eventually. So I know this will be a bit faster than it was for you last week, but I don't expect you to be following on. I expect you just to use this video in a more conventional way. You can replay it to your heart's content. But for the moment we can move this along a wee bit quicker if I use this format. It's an experiment. If you feel that me waiting for you and using the more interactive elements as we did last time, then we'll go back to that. But I would at least like to try this out. So that's the structural framing completed. I'll look at it in the default 3D view with the floors in, and if I look on the underside you should see that they are all in and all properly placed. There might be an argument in this building for having the pile cap foundations and this area of the building here. In other words, these replaced by simple footings, because there's not a lot of weight here and there is much more weight here clearly. So that's in fact exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to change these pile caps, which are holding up a 2-story building. I'm going to swap them back out again for the simple footings, and that'll be fine. I might actually do the opposite with some of these, but for the moment I'm going to leave it as it is. Now that's the structural frame, the floors, the raft, all completed, and that's the stage next week I would like you to get to. Now I'm going to move it on a wee bit. I'm going to put in some atriums and put in some glass walls, and just show you how the thing will develop a wee bit from there. But this is the stage where I would like you to get to. We won't bother with a beam system. That's like a secondary framing within the framing. Although perhaps I'll show you how it works. It's very simple and straightforward. I'll do it on the ground floor. I'll just do, the beam system is in here. I won't save it. For the beam system, if you select or mouse over the beam in this direction, you'll see that it's wanting to place the beams vertically. If I mouse over a horizontal one here, you'll see it wants to place the beams horizontally. And I can change the beam type in here. Okay, I think I will actually just do that. I'll do a few. That's horizontal, and it's usual for kind of sensible reasons to alternate. Good if it worked, wouldn't it? horizontal, vertical, etc, etc. I won't do any more, but you can see how that works. It's quite simple. I'm just going to leave them sitting there, and I won't finish that. And it's really a simple wee tool. In case you can't see it, you need to get the offset as well. I'll freeze off that floor, and I'll move around here. You can see the beams are in. I haven't bothered offsetting these. Offset 1, you can see it's in here, elevation. If you remember, the offset was -300. Apply. I'll just offset 1, you can see how it would work for them all. Okay, that's how that works. I don't want to bother with that really, I've just shown you how that works. I'll unfreeze off that floor. And I'm going to put the massing around this part of the building and around this part of the building. Okay, massing. Massing is a tool, and it's used to put different surfaces on this kind of transparent, translucent, temporary 3D object. So I go to massing. I want to see the masses. I'm just going to use an in-place mass, and I'll use a rectangle, corner to corner. And the bit that people forget, and I would like you not to forget this, is this bit here. I'd like to create the form. We don't actually have to finish the math just yet. I want you to have a wee look at this in 3D. You'll see we've got this rather odd 3D shape, translucent. You wonder what that could possibly have to do with the building. Well, it's because we can use that to place things on top of it, surfaces. In my case, it's going to be glass walls. So I'm going to move this one down. Whoops. Now I can either finish that mass now, or I can join it to the next mass. I'm simply going to finish it. That mass is sitting there, and I'm going to put the glass on it. I'll go to architecture, the curtain system, and I select it face by face. Select that face, that one, come round this side, here, and then over here, and create the system. Now, if it doesn't appear, that's because in this 3D view we haven't made it appear. So I'm going to close that, come out the tool. We know it's modelled, so just in order to let us see it, I go to Visibility and Graphics Override here, and here I edit them, and I make sure that I check architecture, and I also check curtain panels, curtain systems, and even the mullions, which we'll do at a later date. And then the glass wall will appear around this building. You know, that's fine. It's fine as far as it goes. I've got this one to do up here, so I need to remember where that floor is. I think it's level 3, but that floor is it's on level 2 in fact. I'm going to go to level 2, and I'm going to put a mass around this building. Another one. Show mass, that's still visible, so this time it's mass 2. You can change its name if you like, but I don't know if I'd bother. Make sure it's on rectangle. This box which appears is just to show you that you're in a massing environment. It doesn't fulfill any other sensible purpose. Create the form is the bit that people forget. I'm going to check it in 3D. It's fine. Just bring it down. Sometimes you've got to do this in elevation. It's a bit easier. You can just use your eye if you like. And then you can select faces on the mass, edges, and even corners. I'll finish this mass. I'll select it. I'll select the mass. I'll just leave it at that. I'll put the curtain walls on the building. Same as I did before. Create the system. That's curtain walls going all the way around the building. And the last thing I'm going to do today is I'm going to put an atrium. In other words, I'm going to make a hole through the building with a shaft opening, and I'm going to put a glass atrium on the roof. Okay, this is a traditional way of addressing the problem about getting light, either borrowed or given light, into the core of the building, particularly on the lower floors. Although this isn't a particularly tall building, we've got glass walls all the way around it, I'm still going to address this question about getting light into the core of the building. So I'll go to the top level up here, which I seem to remember is level 8, go in here, and I'm going to put a hole in this building in here. So I'm going to go to shaft opening, and I want to retain as many of these columns as I possibly can. So I don't intend to make a shaft opening which is going to use up too much of my column space. I'll put one there, and I'm actually going to draw another one just next door. I don't think they're the same size, but we'll just move them a wee bit and make them a bit more. You can make this precise if you like. I'm not going to bother. The size of it is immaterial for me, but for you, obviously, you might want to make that precise. Okay, I'm going to finish off the two shaft openings. They might helpfully just disappear. Now, I don't want them on the ground floor, so I'm simply going to lift them off using this grip off the ground floor. And I'm going to simply bring them all the way up right through the building. Hurry up. There we are, and we can see we've got two shaft openings. Now, generally, you have to delete the beams. Okay? I'm just going to do exactly that. I'm going to delete these beams. And I'm going to delete these beams. Right, so we have the shaft opening. I'm going to put a new mass. Now remember we made a mass for here and for here to put walls around. I'm going to do exactly the same thing and make two separate masses so I can put walls down right through the building. You could put railings around these. I could put railings. If I zoom in, I'll show you what it would look like. I don't know if you can see it terribly well. I've got too many going on. I can't show you the railings. I'm just going to put the masses in and then put the glass on top. So, level 8. I'm going to go to massing again, in place mass, and I'm going to simply use the outline of the shaft openings. I'm not going to bother with an offset. You can put an offset in there. I'll do this one without an offset. Create the form. Please don't forget that we move. Check it in 3D. We have this weird 3D mass. I think it's weird anyway. I keep calling it weird. Many people find it perfectly normal. I think it's a bit odd. I'll do the next one, level 8. This time I will put an offset in just to let you see the difference. I'll finish that mass, sorry. I'll make them different. So again, massing in sight, in place mass. This is the 4th one we're doing. And this time, again a rectangle, but this time I'll put in an offset. I'll make it the usual ½ meter offset. And then I simply, again, I select exactly on the corners, but this time you'll see it's taken the offset. So create the form, and then finish the mass. And you'll see, ideally, These two masses would be the same, but clearly one is offset on the floor or the roof and one is not. Okay, I don't think it matters that much. Perfectly acceptable for a curtain wall to be suspended at the floor edge. Clearly here it won't be. Now I'm going to select this one here. I'm going to edit it in place. I can select edges, faces, or corners. It's the bottom face I want, so it's that one. It gives me this weird cursor arrangement. I think it's weird. And I want to bring this down the building, but not including the ground floor. So I just want it to come all the way down and stop at level 1. Okay. Now this is probably a bit too tall. I'm going to select the top face now and bring that down a bit. I'm going to do the same with this one. Well, let's finish the map, sorry. And select this one, edit in place, select the face on the bottom. If you find it difficult to select, you can tab through. It will give you the various options. That's the option I want. And I'm going to select the face there and bring it down like its neighbour to level 1. So the glass walls which will eventually attach to this will come all the way down. Finish the maths. And then it's the same old story as I did before. Architecture, curtain system. I'm going to select it face by face. That one, look, top one, that one, and it doesn't let me select it right away. Tab it and then create the system. I'm not going to bother doing this one because I reckon if you can do that one, you can do that one okay. If you come to do two, at least do them both. And at the end, when you've got it completed, I want you to go to Massing and Site and simply turn off the masses. These will change colour because the masses have disappeared and you're left with whatever it was that you placed on top of the masses. So we've used the masses to put in a curtain system around the building and to make an atrium. This looks a bit odd right now because I didn't bother putting the surfaces onto the masses. But I would like you to do it fully. And that's the end of today's webinar. I would like you to get to the stage at least of having the building in fully framed and the masses. In an ideal world, if you can do the masses, that would be great. But certainly, I'd like the building completed. You can do that in your own time. I'll make this webinar or this tutorial video, which is what it really is now, available to you. I'll send you the URL by this time tomorrow. Okay? I don't want to use the interactive features. I'll ask any questions about it now if you like, but ideally I think this is going to work better as a system.